Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama review. In today's review we're going to be checking in with everyone's favourite manipulative, psychotic, masterful grandad, and that is of course the War Master. As in today's review I'm going to be taking a look at the 9th volume of the Doctor Who spin-off series, The War Master, entitled Solitary Confinement. This release is available to purchase now on the official Big Finish website in both physical CD and digital download formats, and it's also available as part of a bundle alongside the other releases within this series. Now, something of which that I would like to mention immediately, especially given that the War Master series is now on its 9th volume of adventures, is that this series is essentially the perfect series for cherry picking. If there is a particular box set by theme or simply cover art that really piques your interest, you can purchase that box set without needing to worry about any prior context from the previous series. Each and every volume is virtually standalone, giving this series that great sense of variety in its adventure, with each and every box set being different, but also at the same time some may think that that might risk the series progressing or having a direction, when in reality I think because of the way it has been written with that variety, I think that each individual box set ensures that it does something different and new, making each box set in its own way special and exciting, but also not just repeating what we have seen before. So basically, in summary for this series, if it piques your interest, definitely take a look at it, because I absolutely love the War Master series. It's one of my personal favourite, if not my personal favourite, ongoing series that Big Finish produce, and Derek Jacobi is absolutely superb at the helm. So naturally, of course, the main antagonist for this series is Derek Jacobi as the wonderful War Master, and the theme of this series, as the title suggests, is that the War Master is in solitary confinement. He's been locked up in a prison, essentially, and we basically see him retelling some of his previous stories from within the Time War. So the opening episode is The Walls of Absence, as written by James Goss. The second episode is The Long Despair, as written by Tim Foley. The third episode is The Life and Loves of Mr. Alexander Bennett, as written by Alfie Shaw, and the concluding episode of the box set is The Kicker, as written by Trevor Baxendale. Now, production-wise on this series, we have the same familiar names returning, so you have Scott Handcock as the script editor, as well as the director and producer. The music has been rather excellently crafted by Robert Harvey. The cover art, the stunning cover art, which is of course a lovely callback to the first ever volume, Only the Good, has been created by Sean Longmore, and then we have the usual other familiar names working on the series as well. So I absolutely loved listening to this box set. In short, I think it's one of those ones that you can really sink your teeth into. All four of the stories do something different and exciting, and yeah, it was one of those box sets that I started listening to and I needed to pace myself throughout, because I could have very easily binge listened to the entire thing. So Solitary Confinement opens with pretty much a two-hander between Sir Derek Jacobi and Sian Phillips in The Wars of Absence, as written by James Goss. The Time War rages on, however we are some distance away from the front line. The Master finds himself within a cell telling stories of his past victories, whilst he can't quite carry out evilness currently around the universe. Code Purger Mendrix is called upon by the Master to help, as he believes there is something wrong with his mind, and much like a computer, the Master's grand complex mind must be reviewed, coded and fixed. The whole idea of having a planet which is known for its coding being a neutral actor helping both Time Lords and Daleks alike is rather interesting, and it certainly put me in the mindset of the likes of the maths expertise within Logopolis. I do also like a War Master story which suggests the Time War is rumbling away, but it doesn't take core precedent within the whole narrative. The planet gradually gets more tense as the story progresses, as we start to see a higher police presence, but that's kind of all we see throughout the episode, placing the main focus on the Master and Mendrix. It's stories like this which I certainly prefer when it comes to the Time War, with planets living away, unknown to the chaos above them. All they have heard is whisperings of something, at least, that is bad going on in the universe. I think that's sometimes the problem with the Doctor Who stories in particular centred within the Time War. There's just too much explosions, too much frontline action, and then as a result we don't really have the more experimental stories that we get to see within the likes of the War Master series. I think it's interesting because the Doctor is very, very difficult to incorporate into the Time War setting, with the exception of the War Doctor. Sian Phillips is lovely as Mendrix. Her relationship with the Master is curious. He's kind of became a part of her personal interest of coding, but throughout that boundary between professional and otherwise starts to blur. It's exciting hearing Jacobi and Phillips play off each other. The relationship between them is based on knowledge, identity and discovery, and this side of the Master is much calmer, more human, and more open to doing normal things, such as staring at the night sky with the stars going by and observing paintings in galleries. It's a much more human side to the Master, and I think it's something that is the perfect way to make the Master seem more normal, and the new series have tried to do this on a number of occasions, but it never quite works as well as this. Whilst the Master describes the stories behind the paintings that he witnesses within the galleries to test his mind, there is still that sinister edge to his character. And I think certainly as a listener it definitely makes you feel quite tense within the listening experience because you kind of know more than Mendrix. You know that that Master is lurking away inside him somewhere. Or is he? Has he genuinely changed? As a listener, I personally found myself really warming to this version of the Master, as the portrayal is somewhat endearing, and yet you also know that there is a much darker side that will appear eventually. This really adds suspense to the entirety of the story. The ending of the episode is also great, very War Master in design, and it's also a scene that I wish just went that one step further, just to be that ever so slight more crueler and evil. I adore when this series kind of goes darker, and perhaps pushes the boat out a little bit more than it should. It's scenes like this that you don't get within Doctor Who, and that's why I found this series such a gripping listen personally. The Doctor isn't around, the Master has the rulebook, and therefore anything can happen. Having standalone 1 hour stories really allows you to become immersed within the characters of the episode, and despite being mainly a two-hander, I think that it flows at a considerably good pace and certainly kept my attention. But that said, being a standalone story, it does also add additional pressure onto the other episodes within the set to be just as impressive, if not better, but regardless, it is a great way to start off this set. Tim Foley pens the second episode of Solitary Confinement with The Long Despair, and I'm so very happy to be once more taking a look at another War Master Foley script. This story definitely embraces the idea that the Master is locked up within a cell, more so than episode 1, as Jacobi essentially narrates the tale to one of the prison guards. This allows Jacobi to really sell the story to the listener. You are being guided by the man himself, as if you were in that prison cell too. On a murky planet backwater with very little land but lots and lots of dark sea, in the distance on the horizon the people are haunted by a light, which many have voyaged to but have never returned. Naturally, this mission sounds like one of signing their death warrant, which is exactly something that the Jacobi Master would sign up for, as he strolls into one of the local inns in the local villages, hoping to find a boat and a willing captain. Jason Fleming is great as the captain. Trapped on a boat with the Master will undoubtedly be quite difficult, but boy does he provide a great challenge to go up against. Both very strong personalities as they venture together towards this mystical light on the murky seas. There have been many stories told from within the sea waves, from mysterious encounters and scary forces, and with both the Master and the Captain hiding their true intentions, it makes for yet another brilliant two-hander story, which I think is quite rare, going from a two-hander to yet another two-hander, but I don't think it's overwhelming. I think it works really well, and especially for this box set, it definitely hammers home that theme. I really love the little titles that they give themselves at the very start of the story. A master of many things and a captain of very little. It really displays the position that both of the characters came to the story with and kind of continue to deliver their opinion from as the story progresses. I think the joys of having a story with such a limited cast also allows for lots of isolated focus on the main man himself. It allows him to kind of manipulate the people around him, but also it's a lovely character piece to show how the War Master interacts with different people. My favourite moment within this story is hearing the War Master drown. Really grim, but that's the War Master series for you. The lovely description narrated by Jacobi himself, the slow stages of demise accompanied by an atmospheric sound design make the sequence incredibly intense and eerie. Jacobi delivers it superbly, so otherworldly, but also shedding some light probably on why he's been locked up for his own good in the first place, because his mind is clearly not normal. He is simply so sinister, and this is a perfect example of why an antagonist at the helm is such a great way to tell a story, because he has command over every single event, and that is exactly what you want from a baddie character in order to get to the more sinister side of their personality. In a War Master story, no one is safe. You're rooting for him, which also means you're probably expecting that something bad will happen to the captain. It certainly twists the tables compared to a Doctor Who story, with no good force coming to save the day. I suppose it's a mission story, but the listener is kept in the dark as to what that mystery is actually about, and what the Master's intentions actually are. As I've already mentioned, this story is a two-hander, and I don't think that will suit everybody's tastes, but if it's something that you think you could give a go, I definitely recommend doing so, because so far this box set has certainly been very strong. I've really loved both of the stories so far, and certainly recommend it to anyone who has previously listened to this range. It really excels on lots of the stronger points seen within the previous series, and Jacobi simply provides an excellent performance. There is such a breadth of skills within the performance which remind me as a listener as to why he is so suited to the audio drama form. There is so much lovely versatility within the performance, dependent on the company he finds himself within. He can do warm, endearing, menacing, outright mad, calculating, which is why you're always kept on your toes. This Master has so much personality and breadth, which is why I think I click more with him compared to other Masters, because he is an actual personality beyond simply being bad. However, overall for episode 2, again, I really enjoy this one. I'm being really evasive of the actual plot details because I think it is so simple to follow, but as a result, kind of even digging ever so slightly deeper into the narrative kind of reveals the twists and turns along the way. But I do really enjoy it for what it offers. I think that Tim Foley, once again, has written another really detailed character piece that really enhances the personalities and brings the characters to life. Solitary Confinement continues to grow from strength to strength, with episode 3, The Life and Loves of Mr. Alexander Bennett, as written by Alfie Shaw. This story is an absolute corker. If you like artificial intelligence technologies and human dystopias with chilling plots, this episode is absolutely for you. Interestingly, for the most part, Derek Jacobi has what is weirdly enough such an integral yet also incredibly minor role, voicing the AI voice of the Meizo assistance speaker. Throughout basically the entirety of this story, you have the War Master being an Alexa, and then as a result, basically all you get to see throughout this story is the Master delivering the usual gestures that you would expect from an Alexa, and yet somehow that evilness still shines through. There is still that masterful presence lurking. It's incredibly chilling. Jacob Dudman plays the main character of the drama, being Alex, a worker from a company which has developed the Meizo speaker. He lives with his girlfriend Mia, except they have just moved into a new apartment, and it's clear the job is taking its toll on him, and he has agreed to quit. And I think it's fair to say that his relationship is kind of riding on him quitting this job, except a promotion crosses his lap, and everything falls apart from this point onwards. The whole listening experience is incredibly slick. It's as if I'm listening along to an audio drama interpretation of Black Mirror. One of the big pros of the War Master series is that in the absence of a hero, i.e. the Doctor, the spin-off overall is a lot darker, a lot less predictable, less comforting, but also it feels quite adult. The emotional manipulation throughout this story, the threats, the twists, even the actual representation of real-life relationship problems, all feel a lot more real and less wishy-washy compared to what you would expect within a Doctor Who story. The relationship between Alex and Mia and the difficulties that are presented within the early half of this relationship do very much feel like they are from an adult drama or a teen drama that deals with actual relationship issues rather than a Doctor Who relationship that often seems to be quite happy and positive, and then when it's not, it's just kind of bad and then they don't really dig into why. This story feels like it's challenging the listener, but also going beyond the usual format of a Doctor Who story, again continuing to show how this series has developed into something in its own right. The fact it feels very real and very adult also makes for quite a disturbing experience. A big credit goes to Jacob Dudman being the main character within this plot. We see his character navigate breakups, employment, the gradual destruction of his life rather casually, and again this feels very bleak, but it certainly kept me hooked all the way throughout. This is one of those stories that kind of punches you and then it continues to beat you up as the story progresses. It's definitely not light-hearted, but let's face it, if you've listened to anything from the War Master series then you know that by this point. This episode is kind of as bleak as the Skyman, but in a very different way. The standalone 1 hour stories has really worked within this set, allowing all of the writers to explore something new. To me, it returns to the variety and similar compliments I would in fact give to the likes of the first box set being Only the Good, which for those of you that have listened to that review, you will know I absolutely adore that set, so that is a very high compliment indeed. Again, I think that this series continues to challenge the format because normally when you have standalone episodes within a box set, again there may perhaps not be that sense of direction. Because all 4 of the stories are incredibly bold and rather hard-hitting and all have completely different locations, it really works. The plot is simple yet so very clever. You get the mind-manipulating Time Lord to address people through a speaker that they virtually allow into their own homes. Imagine how someone like the Master could use that technology, using assistance tools and using something that is in your everyday home setting. It's such a perfect idea, and yet I am baffled as to how this idea hasn't taken place within the TV show yet. It's one of the reasons I absolutely love Big Finish, is I feel like the writing teams really keep up with technological advances and relevant news in the media currently, and in turn that directly feeds into the types of stories that are told. The TV show, I think, in recent years has rather lacked this. It feels a little bit behind of the times. It doesn't really narrate on current things, certainly when it comes to technology. It's maybe a bit more up to date when it comes to political things, but not so much technological advances. This story returns to a rather similar format to that of episode 1, where the Master being locked in the prison cell and that aspect of the narrative is kind of limited to the beginning and the end of the story, rather than a narration being adopted to tell the entire story, much like how we see within episode 2. And again, I think that this was a very logical decision, because it allows the Master's presence to be solely told through the AI, and this made me feel, I think, more immersed within the story and Alex's rather tragic situation. This type of story is one that I really appreciate. It pushes the boat out, it's darker, it's like the Skyman from Only the Good. It reminds me of the older Big Finish dramas that were able to get away with a little bit more under the Doctor Who licence. It just feels a little bit more gritty and real. I think that this story almost takes it as far as it can dare for an emotional side of things, allowing the listener to infer the rest, making it perfect for an older or more experienced Big Finish listener. The Kicker concludes this box set, and it wraps up all of the Asylum threads which have connected this series together. Despite having isolated stories which all do different things, I really love the Asylum aspect of the narrative. It creates a theme and therefore cohesion throughout the entirety of the stories, therefore giving the box set direction and a satisfying conclusion. This entire story is set within the Drain Institute, which we've seen gradually more and more as the stories have progressed. The Master is playing card games with fellow inmate Schilling, meanwhile Sandeya and her assistant Mr. Keltis arrive at the Institute, ready to interview him. The man who claims to be the Master, but who quite obviously isn't. He's just a vulnerable old man after all, pretending. Or is he? Jacobi has a lot to do in this one. He's a central focus, which is lovely after episode 3. Again, I love the way that the stories kind of work together to balance out each other. We didn't get much Jacobi in the last one, now let's have lots of him within this one. He always has command over the room. Despite being interrogated, he still has his own ideas. He utilises his own stereotypical traits as the Master that he is known for to convince others of his identity, which in itself also makes people question if he is actually the Master in the first place by being incredibly stereotypical, which for me as a listener then made me think, what on earth is he up to? The character of Schilling, he's also really intriguing. It's really nice seeing the Master spend time with someone within his confined cell, a character who looks up to him and is so intrigued by the various card games that he teaches. Eva Pope and Silas Carlson as Sandeya and Drain also really play off each other. You get that sense the whole institute is essentially falling apart. They both want answers, but the Master is simply playing them both. Lois Chimimba also has a reoccurring thread throughout this series as Bathalom, a doctor-like character trying to hold the Master to account and asking the big questions, like why he's acting so evil, why does he do all of this in the first place? And again, I like their relationship because they clearly do not get on, and yet she is still simply wanting to find out how his mind works. She is simply so captivated by his stories. I think Trevor definitely has a good understanding of what it takes to write for the Master. Jacobi subsequently embraces each and every line, and delivers it in a way only Derek Jacobi could. With games and themes of games playing a big part of the story's opening scene, this theme is embraced throughout the entirety of the narrative, gradually allowing the Master to score points. Given the bleakness that was episode 3, this story is also complemented throughout by various comedic moments, which allow the Master to relish in his more witty comedic personality and some glorious one-liners, especially when faced with a sentient lie detector. As you can expect, there are some great twists and turns throughout this story, some excellent masterful revelations, especially towards the end, which is a great way to cap off this set, whilst also fueling the listener with excitement and reminding them that the Master, as always, is the one who holds the rulebook. From track 1 of episode 1, the momentum within this series began on a high. This continued throughout each and every episode, making each scene relevant to the set's core theme, but also the individual stories that each episodes hold within them, and the interesting character dynamics presented throughout. It could easily be a box set to binge listen in one sitting. It's a truly addictive listen, but then at the same time I also recommend pacing yourself with this one, listening to a story, going away, thinking about it, and appreciating it. So there we have it, that is my review of The War Master Volume 9 Solitary Confinement. Overall, an incredibly strong set. I really enjoyed listening to this one, and I look forward to revisiting it in the future. I think especially compared to some of the other War Master box sets that have came out recently, the likes of Escape from Reality, Self-Defense, and maybe even Killing Time, I think the series does certainly have strong stories. Each and every box set has a selling point, and it does always achieve on those goals. I don't think there has ever been a box set for me that I have found thoroughly disappointing. All of them have certainly been at the stronger end of my appreciation, but I do definitely think that the current box set, Solitary Confinement, returns back to a rather strong way of telling stories that I would often associate with the earlier box sets in this series, the likes of Only the Good, Master of Callus, or box sets that I really do enjoy. And subsequently, I do definitely recommend this one, especially if you like those first few sets. It is such a treat, and as always of this series, I just look forward to each and every performance from the man himself. So thank you very much for watching this review. I really hope you have enjoyed it. Do of course stay tuned on The Host Productions for regular Doctor Who reviews. Have a nice day, and I shall see you all next time.